I guess some things might have happened with this resolution over the weekend. That that's what I heard, Shawn. Good morning, Shawn.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Good morning, Joser, and good morning, everyone that's listening all over the world, island. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, just and we'll talk. I mean, I know we're here for the podcast, but just a little heads up: progressive Democrats of Guam have come out with a press release, and I think I've seen it all. Progressive
Sure
Democrats of Guam, they're coming out with a press release, and then this press release, they're actually thanking Republican Senator Tello Taitagui for withdrawing her support of Resolution 291. This is the resolution that would end the public health emergency. And yeah, so there was a couple clips Friday from session where the minority leader and the speaker kind of went back and forth, but I'm not sure if they didn't have the support from the get-go or if the support wavered and fell off after the governor's she went nuclear at that press conference on was it Thursday, Shawn?
Yeah, it was. And it's an interesting, we're just talking about in the break, just the tactical discipline of the governor going into that particular event ahead of a hearing.
Yeah,
I thought that would have thrown a really big monkey wrench, but I think why the progressives are happy this morning is because of, Tello pulling her support.
Yeah, and I mean, that press conference, I think it was, you're right, it was interesting, the timing of it, especially given that this is a public hearing and, the public hadn't yet been able to chime in on their thoughts on this resolution. But I think it was more of a signal fire that she kind of went in that press conference and said, hey, this is how I really feel about this. And I think that, maybe that was a sign, I mean, like they didn't know already.
Yeah, I think so too. And not to mention the testimony that next day was, especially the first part, was pretty pointed.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, we're here to talk about this new episode of That's It, That's All. This is a great episode. I love it when you talk election. And so the title of this episode is, are you voting Democrat or Republican?
Yes, it was one of those things, Chris, where and I mentioned it in the podcast. I just threw it out over on Twitter, and it just made me start thinking about it. So I figured, well, let's talk it up. I mean, for me, as you know, it's always been my focus is going to be turnout, but also kind of like my from talking to folks over the last couple of weeks, especially for both parties, on exactly what they believe the issues are going to be and who they're going to vote for. So it was timing's everything, and I'm hoping people would listen, and if they need some help deciding, well, maybe they might be very helpful.
So here you go. It's a little sneak peek of the latest episode of That's It, That's All on the KUAM Podcast Network with Shawn Gumataotao.
Primaries in Guam, set for August 27, 2022, will be more of an exercise in ideology than anything else. The 2022 primary election may have more interest in it than any other primary since Guam started this process back in 1969. There are distinct differences between those days of old and the modern-day Guam election. First, turnout. To this podcaster, turnout for both the primary and general elections are so very important for the community. The same 49,000 registered voters will be asked how they want their government to look for the foreseeable future. It really is an important decision. It has been some time that the Guam electorate has been this small in Guam elections, this 49,000 figure. While we know that there will be some growth in the lead up to Decision 2022, the last time this number decided an election outcome, 1992. There was 46,681 registered voters, or a 74.7% voter turnout then. In 1992, the Democratic Party of Guam took a supermajority in the Guam legislature, a foreshadowing of things to come for the island and control of Guam's executive and legislative branches. In that group, two men would eventually be elected governor in Carl Gutierrez and Felix Camacho. The speaker, Joe T. San Augustine, took the gavel for his third stint as the speaker, his ninth consecutive term. Historically, the 74.7% voter turnout was the second lowest turnout since the people of Guam started voting for their representative government in 1950.
Yeah, Sean, this is really interesting because we've kind of been talking about this since the last election. Is all about that voter turnout. I mean, you know, the people who have a stake in this, they're going to show up to vote, but what about everyone else?
You know, that's right, Chris. And I think we've said it before that hopefully the Guam Election Commission, maybe they should listen to, but also the major parties should be paying close attention to this particular issue. There's no question people are going to vote Republican. They're going to vote Democrat. It's going to be incumbent on both parties to pull those, quote, independents, if you will, over to their side. But when we start looking at these gubernatorial elections and we start looking at just how many people are voting for the highest seat, we said it on election night when Governor Liu was elected, that we just couldn't believe that the turnout was so abysmal. We need to, again, as a community, realize just how important these elections are. I mean, if it's apathy, well, so be it. But it just makes, for all of us, we should be very concerned about how we elect our highest office and how many people are voting in it. And I'll say just today on this show, go and register if you haven't, and then make sure when it's time to go and vote. It's your civic duty to do that. And we should be doing that as a community more and more, especially in these very challenging times.
You know, Sean, when I talk to my friends in the election business, I mean, if you will, one thing they talk about is quality of candidates, right? I mean, you know, when you look out at who's running, it really is the same people over and over, or, you know, their kids, right? And that being said, how do you think the quality or, you know, lack of quality to some people of candidates affects voter turnout?
I think it's time for us to start looking at maybe a part-time legislature, that the quality, people aren't going to leave the private sector. These quality people are actually working. They got real jobs. They're not politicking every day for 2 straight years. I have friends who are in the Hawaii State Legislature who have real jobs. They do their budget, they do their appointee stuff, and they're back to work. The quality of legislation in part-time legislatures also has proven to be way higher than the others across the country. And you can look at the National Council of State Governments. You can go down all the list of the different organizations that have looked at this issue very specifically. And maybe it's time that the community now pivots toward a part-time legislature to bring out the best and brightest of our society. I'm not saying that they're not now, but I think we would get quality people and quality legislation if we make that push to a part-time legislature.
Congressman Michael St. Nicholas, I know that in this podcast you talk a lot about his impact and what it's going to be on this gubernatorial election on the Democratic side.
Yes, in fact, in terms of if you're voting Democrat, you're voting in a primary. And so I think people, when they start thinking of that, they're like, oh, we have a primary? Yes, you do. And if you're backing any one of those 2 horses, you have to be, making sure you're out there. And obviously for Mike St. Nicholas, he is the top of the ticket. Now, whether or not he has someone to run with, I think you mentioned it earlier in the show. It's proving to be a little bit more challenging than he thought. And so I think most of us are just rooting for him to make sure that he has someone to run with. If his conviction is great and he's willing to step forward, then hopefully someone else will join him in that effort to go against the incumbent governor.
Now, I know you pay attention, and in our never-ending quest to report the truth and the facts, we've reported on this Office of Congressional Ethics report that was circulating. Shawn and I kind of went over this in my open monologue. To me, the supporters of Congressman St. Nicholas and his messaging, I feel like they've succeeded in making this ethics investigation really about the alleged affair, right? But there's a whole other part that this report really focuses on, and that's the black and white of the accepting of this over-the-limit donation and the subsequent actions that the Office of Congressional Ethics I mean, basically said was a scheme and a cover up to hide the donation from not just the Federal Election Commission, but the public. What do you think? Because like I said this morning, I feel like people have made their decision on how the Chakmak allegations are going to play out, if they're going to play out for voters. But like I said, I feel like this black and white money thing, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, the latter. I mean, it won't bubble up to be as much of a campaign issue as the first. And we teach our kids, Chris. You have kids, I do. We teach them that if we're going to do things, we follow the rules. And generally speaking, there's some consequences for not. In the case of what KOM has been reporting, as you know, the issue is that Federal Election Commission document that was attested by the congressman. Now, having a little experience with this, when you sign that means that what you presented was true. And you acknowledge that if you sign it and it's wrong, that there'll be a penalty for that. And however that will be, you're fully cognizant. I know that this issue is not just thinking, okay, the Federal Election Commission is going to do something. And it's likely that they probably will, based on the Office of Congressional Ethics recommendation. But it goes back, and let me just say, because I like Maria, I like all the group there at the Guam Election Commission, but they also, I mentioned in one of my podcasts how this is going to roll downhill, and it's going to come back to the Guam Election Commission. When John Paul came to your office and said, I have these issues, and then the chair said, well, great, thank you very much, let's move on, next item. That totally is the start of what is going to have a bigger fallout for the territory. Yes, Congressman San Nicolas decided to do what he did. There's the allegation of it. The Ethics Commission said this is that they believe happened, signatures and the like, right? You reported it on this air. But the fallout from the Federal Election Commission will be significant. Not just for him, but probably for the Guam Election Commission, because it was the first, call it check, in the balance that is supposed to be a process. Yeah. And people will say, Shawn, you're always so hung up on processes. And I go, well, yeah, because again, we have a process to go to school. We have a process to put the water on. We have a process to turn the light on, right? But when you think about this effort, it's the same. You can't say that, no, it's just politics. It's not politics. He signed something, he attested, and you'll have to answer for that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting in the report, with an ethics investigation, I think for a lot of people, they think it's an ethical issue. But this report actually says that if he did everything that they believe he did, then there was not just a violation of FEC rules and regs, but of federal law. So, I mean, there is that. And do you think that when we talk about the challenges in finding a running mate, and I know that a lot of people are talking about Senator Amanda Shelton. I'm not sure how officially that has been confirmed, but if you're Senator Amanda Shelton and you're, watching this story, I presume she's seen the report and maybe listening to people talk about it. When Congressman San Nicolas asks you to run with him, I mean, what do you think that conversation is like? Because I almost feel like, what else would the congressman say other than, oh, it's not a big deal, or, because he hasn't responded really to this whole process.
I mean, first off, he didn't even participate in the process. Yeah. So let's just say it that way. And then secondly, if someone like Senator Shelton's looking at this, she has to decide what is, the bigger picture for her. They believe they can win, great. Is this going to become an issue? Absolutely. And she is, my understanding, they're already, they're all trying to get her there so they can make an announcement. Yeah. And if the story is out there and she reads it and she decides, well, heck, I don't know if this is a bridge too far for me, then maybe she just bows out. But if she says, okay, I trust what you're saying, then I guess you got to race.
Yeah. Well, let's just start. Because I know that you have the experience with the messaging. So if you are Congressman San Nicolas and Senator Shelton, how do you respond to this report in a way that, kind kind of puts it to bed, or else you got to keep dealing with it, you know, down the road every time you pop up.
Yeah, you know, Chris, during the congressional race, it was okay to sit in your hospital bed and then be online and not respond to anyone, right? It was on this air, okay? We saw him come on the air and click you off, right? He cannot do that in a gubernatorial election. The governor of Guam, she's campaigning hard right now. She's in all the villages. They are going full steam ahead, Mike or not. So if he believes he can do it without touching a hand, without asking, without raising money, this is not the same race that he kind of did the unthinkable, and doing it from a particularly different way of politics. I mean, I said it before on this air that the former Congressman Robert Underwood ran a textbook campaign.
Yeah, and he got killed.
He did it right, and he still lost.
Yeah.
So, but this gubernatorial election is way different. And I think there's as you know, if Mike's going to go into it, if he thinks that this is not going to be a campaign issue, I think he'd be sorely mistaken. And in the general, if he makes it that far, don't think that isn't going to be an issue. And it's going to be one of those things where the people will have to look at their own value system when they're casting a vote. Do they think that it's okay? Don't think this is not going to catch up to him if he wins and there's like maybe down the road the FEC decides to prosecute. Let's just be honest. It's not going to go away. That attestation, he signed it, and it's pretty much inked and been done and sent.
It seems pretty precarious, Shawn, if we entertain this notion that there's this racing against the clock, right? That the congressman is going to have to make an announcement that he's going to run for governor before this ethics investigation wraps up. Because, you know, everyone's saying, oh, if you read this report, if this investigation wraps up, there's probably going to be, and I'm not sure how, does it work something like, from what I've heard, they finish the investigation, they sit, you know, the congressperson down, whoever it may be, and they say, hey, this is what we got. It's pretty bad. Why don't you resign? And then the member of Congress will make a determination like, oh, yeah, it is bad. I don't want to fight that in the press. I'm going to quit. I'm out of here. Or, no, I'm not going to resign. So do you think that that's what we're up against, and that this moment will come before the primary? Because it's really good.
Yeah, I think, no, Chris, I think people think that, okay, it just happens as soon as he declares. But he's congressman until January. Yeah. And just think that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the entire political machinery, after letting go a bunch of other members for issues that probably were not nearly as serious as this one, that they don't think that they won't censure, which is maybe one thing they could do. They're not going to kick him out right away. That's not likely to happen. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's definitely interesting, Shawn. I know that the State of the Island address for the governor coming up. I thought I heard something in your podcast about that.
Yeah, it sounds like he was trying to find out when she was going to do it, and then, okay, I think I'm going to launch then. Take the air out of the room, and then in her own speech, asking her, hey, what's your reaction to Mike Nicholas launching a campaign?
You're devious.
Now think about that for a second.
Yeah.
You're not asking the governor, oh, great speech, pat on the back, because don't think that the other guys, the Republicans, all be there with your microphones. You're going to go around. They're going to ask her, what do you think about a launch? In the middle of, right after her big policy speech number 4, mind you.
Right.
Her legacy speech, if you will. Very disruptive. Tactically, doesn't sound outside of the realm of possibilities for sure. For certain.
Yeah, definitely. All I know is we better be stocking up on our popcorn.
Popcorn and probably some other Pepto, because they're going to be having a hard time any food after that if that's the case.
Someone's going to get a tummy ache.
Oh, man. It wouldn't be the first time a Democrat complained of a tummy ache going in before speeches.
Shawn,
but the idea is, it's going to, sorry, my partisanship coming out,
yeah.
But it is, as you like to say, what it is. And I think we just created a whole new phraseology here in Guam, especially with things. But it makes it for interesting politics, man. It would be cool if he actually did it. Launched right the day of the State of the Island address.
Yeah, I mean.
And then what would be the requisite reaction? Be tough, man. You're spending all that time working on thinking of a speech, and then now you got to, all the air's out of the room, and like, I got to answer what? I just did a speech.
Hello.
I'm the lead story. Yay! I'm the lead story.
All right. Well, Shawn, we did have a couple comments here. What would the GEC face if the FEC decides the charges are, in fact, true? Now, where the GEC plays in is if you read this report, and there was also a transcript of an interview that John Paul Manuel did with the Office of Congressional Ethics. But if you read this report, they reference that John Paul had filed a complaint, similar issues, I'm presuming, with the Guam Election Commission. Now, I've studied their, and they've told me about their process. So once you file a complaint, the whole process it's confidential until the end. And then if a candidate, and I think even the discipline is also confidential, and only the candidate can choose to reveal it. So although it was mentioned that there was a complaint filed, there was no mention about what had happened. And I think we kind of just got tired of following up because it was a couple of years of they can't discuss it unless the congressman came out and said, hey, this is what happened, but it's not really one to do that. So
I think some of the sanctions that we think could be some maybe withholding of federal funds to the election commission. They do get some federal monies to run our elections, so it's not like they're not boatloads of money where you're thinking, okay, great. But as you talk to Maria Pangilinan on this air so many different times, the funds really make a difference. How do we pay registrars? How do we pay precinct officials? How do we pay for all of the ballots? So the Federal Election Commission money is an important aspect of this that could be at stake. I didn't say it was, but yes, there could be some sanction on some federal funds for sure. There could be other administrative things. The Federal Election Commission does have. They run all elections in the United States of America. Guam's is not any different, and we do have federal elections, obviously for Congress, that could have some implications down the road for that. And also the black eye is that they listened, but they really didn't do anything. And then now, what's happened? I think that might be just as bad for the GEC as the black eye. And like I said, I have a lot of respect for Maria. She has to deal with a board. Now, let's remember the board who was in place. Yeah. The chairman said, okay, like you say, no's a nothing burger. Yeah. Move on. Yeah. So we'll see.
You have a very partisan board. They're going to make partisan decisions.
Sure are.
Thank you, Shawn. Guys, that's it. That's all the new episode. It's up everywhere. Fine podcasts are found on the KUAM Podcast Network, Apple, Spotify. Where do you have it up at, my friend?
We have it on Amazon Music. We're also on the iHeartRadio app and on Pandora. And again, we're very excited to be a part of the KUAM Podcast Network. We are home of the most original programming in Guam and Micronesia. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to That's It, That's All, our podcast, and the other great podcasts of the KUAM Podcast Network, you're missing out. You should check them out. There's some really good stuff up there. And I'm enjoying a lot of the One Micronesia podcast. I'm a big fan of that podcast. So kudos to you guys and keep up the good work over there, Chris.
Thank you, Shawn. Have a great day.
I sure will. Thanks again.
Right on. He's over at the University of Guam getting ready to clock in there. Shawn Gumataotao. That's it. That's all, the podcast. Good discussion. 7:31. We are brought to you by Calvo Enterprises, IT&E, and Jack in the Box. Good morning, my friend F. Glenn Lujan. He says, good morning, everyone. Hafaday, Guam. Happy Monday. Yay, Monday! Right on. Chamarita Rageous comment.